I'm ready whenever you are, Dominic.
Okay. Let's do the seconds. It still says 4:59. On the second. 5 p.m. There you go. Okay. Okay, calling this meeting to order for the April 25th, 2025, April 24th, 2025 Hcdpa meeting. Can I have a roll call, please?
Yeah. Board Member Johnson.
Present.
Board Member Joyner.
Present.
Board Member Morris.
Present.
Board Member Morante.
Here.
And Board Member Smith.
Here.
And we have Chris, Kale, online, and Michelle.
Great. So did everybody get a chance to read the minutes?
I did.
Can I get a motion? If there's no questions or discussion, can I get a motion to accept?
I'll make that motion. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passed. Next is the admin report. We have Nicole here from our auditor. So I'll hand it off to Mr. Logan.
Okay, I'll hand it off, Nicole, if you want to start, and I can project whatever you want to go over.
Sure. I'm going to start with the financial statements if you can put those up. So we have a draft of the audited financial statements for the year ended December 31st. They're in draft form, and subsequent to this meeting, we will issue them final once the agreement with HHA has been signed and fully executed, just because we have certain things reflected in here, assuming that that's going to be finalized. So once we get those signed documents, then we can make this final. You can submit your PARIS and be up to date with your compliance. So a lot of this is the same stuff we talked about over the last few years. You may tell you what pages to go to.
Sure, yeah.
So if you go to page 1, which doesn't have a page number at the bottom, it's the independent auditor's report. So our audit opinion is qualified again. That has been consistent over the years. The reason for the qualification is you have this balance on your statement of net position, a deferred inflow of resources that nobody knows what it relates to. We've talked about this for a few years now. Basically, until board or management can determine what that balance is, we can resolve that, the opinion will continue to be qualified. It's a material balance that goes back many years and hasn't been resolved. Outside of that, that's the only basis for our qualified opinion. We had no other issues. Going to page 4, which is your statement of net position, I'll just call out a few things here. So if you look towards the middle of the page where it says contingent liability HHA option. So because HHA exercised the option subsequent to year end in 2025, but you knew there was that contingent liability as of the balance sheet date, as of December 31st, you basically have to now go back and reflect the impact of that exercising the option and what you estimate now to be the loss as of the balance sheet date. So as a result, we reported a contingent liability of $222,500. And the way we calculated that was basically what you're going to discount the properties by, the 50%, and any of the option payments that you're going to apply to that purchase. So that is all disclosed in the footnotes, which we'll get to in a minute, but that's really the most significant change there. Everything else is just roll forward of the balances year to year. The property is still maintained at the fair value, which is the $715,000. And then once you actually sell it, then it'll get reduced by the sale price and the contingent liability will go away. So that should happen in 2025 or 2026 based on the agreement, right? Okay, and then on the next page, page 5, for the year, you've had a decrease in your net position of approximately $370,000, mainly because you start generating any revenue right now besides the option payment that you've been receiving, the $25,000, and the $35,000 that you get for the trust fund. So you're continuing to spend funds that you've received in the past towards the Hudson Housing Trust Fund, but the revenue isn't coming in the same period, so you're showing the loss. Page 6, your statement of cash flows. Again, here, this just shows that your cash decreased again. So the decrease in your cash for the year was approximately 128,000. You were able to collect on the one loan that you had, generating cash of 25,000, but your operating expenses are exceeding your revenue, which is decreasing your cash. The footnotes, most of it are just carry forwards and nothing really unusual to point out. If you go to page 13, Logan, note 7 is where we begin to talk about the loss contingency, and we disclose the amount there, because that's the commitments and contingency footnote. And then in the option agreement footnote, which is note 13, we elaborate on that. Note 8 is a going concern because of the things we just talked about, the fact that you're not really generating cash, your revenue is not in excess of your expenditures. There's still a risk that you're going to be able to continue as an organization in the future. So there's certain language in here that just draws the reader to that fact. Note 13 is the option agreement with the Hudson Housing Authority. I would ask that everybody just read that and make sure that the language here is representative of, what the agreement is and your understanding, just because that's an important transaction and we want to make sure we get it right. So we've written this based on the agreement that's been shared with us, but you just want to make sure everybody kind of puts their eyes on it. This is the one thing that I would say is important for everybody, just make sure they're comfortable with it. And then because this is a government audit and you submit the Paris report, there's also a report on internal control over financial reporting. That's page 17, Logan. So we have 3 comments in this letter, 2 material weaknesses and a significant deficiency. They're the same comments we've had for the past numerous years. They really haven't changed. The material weakness is related to the fact that we qualify the opinion because of that matter. That deferred inflow of resources that nobody really knows what it is. So that's a material weakness that's been in this report for many, many years. The second material weakness is related to the accrual basis of accounting. So again, every year we've had this comment because typically when we do the audit, we have certain adjustments that we have to make to get the books to be GAAP compliant. Ideally, management should be trying to make those adjustments before the audit. So I know Logan's wearing a lot of hats and he might not necessarily be a bookkeeper. So he may need some assistance from somebody. You may want to think about if there's a consultant or somebody that you could engage. Doesn't have to be a big, scope, but even if they spend, 15 hours at the end of the year helping him close the books so that he could get all those adjustments in there, it would prevent you from having this in the report each year. It's not like they're complicated adjustments typically, like the adjustment this year for the loss contingency was a little bit unusual and took some thought, but for the most part, they're the same entries every year. So if you had somebody who could just assist him with that, it would be a good idea. And then the significant deficiency is just segregation of duties because, again, Logan's wearing a lot of hats. He's basically doing all the day-to-day. There's certain checks and balances that aren't ideal. So the option there is either if you had a consultant, they might be able to bridge some of that gap, or the board just needs to kind of step up and do certain things to kind of oversee or segregate the duties in a certain way so that he's not responsible for everything. That's the financial statements.
With regard to the duties, we did put in place for all of last year when I was treasurer, monthly reconciliation of the books, and I participated in that every month.
Okay.
So after your recommendations last year, we did do that. And I think I emailed you to that effect.
Yeah, I don't think we really call that out necessarily as a problem still. It's more just that, he's still responsible for the general ledger. He's collecting the mail, which includes the deposits. He's doing the deposits to the bank. He's doing the reconciliations, even though you're checking them. It's still just a lot.
Not anymore.
Okay.
No,
Now you're checking them.
in other words, you're saying that another person is needed to do that, in a sense. Other than
No,
just
not
checking.
Ideally, but I know you don't have the resources to do that on a day-to-day basis. So the question is just what can you do to try it? And we can have another conversation to try and brainstorm what you could do. I mean, like bringing the deposits to the bank, like it is possible that you have a board member do that because you probably don't have a lot of deposits, right? You may have,
No.
right now, like 3 deposits for the year. So it's potentially an option to have, you know, a board member do that versus Logan. The journal entries, that's an easy one. I mean, any journal entries that he's recording, which typically is our audit adjustments, to be honest, they just need to be reviewed by somebody else. So like Teresa, that'd be an easy thing for you to just get a list of journal entries that he made and make sure you understand them and sign off on it. And then you just keep that documentation. It's not gonna be a big, you know, ask. It's just kind of tweaking things so that there's a certain level of oversight that is missing. Does anybody have any other comments on the financial statements, questions? And then the other document, Logan, is the required communication letter.
Yep.
This is basically just our standard language. The only thing I'll draw your attention to is on page 3. That's where we list the adjustments that we did make during the audit process. So like, you'll see there's 7 entries that we made. That's where, you know, if you had a consultant to try and do that before we come in, that's the ideal. You really don't want to be relying on your auditor to make the audit adjustments because then you have a material weakness that management doesn't have controls in place to be able to do the entire. Really management's responsibility to get the books in order and reconcile at year end before we do our work.
I question, don't we have a finance committee or something on this board? Can that be done through the finance committee on the board?
Sure, it could be.
Yeah, it does, you,
Yeah,
if there's
maybe we
somebody.
should meet separate once a month or something like that for a minute, or Zoom meetings.
To try and do the adjustments
Yeah.
or? Yeah, I mean, it can be the board where the board just steps up and tries to help with that or somebody else. It really, it depends how you want to do it.
Because we do have a finance committee within this board.
Mhm.
Who's on the committee?
Finance audit.
Yeah, you just need somebody familiar with, you know, how to make the adjustments. And if you look at the adjustments, you know, from the prior year, it's basically just anticipating, you know, what do I need to do for this year that's gonna address that adjustment from last year. And you can ask us questions. It's not like
Yes.
we're not available to you to answer questions. It's just, we shouldn't be doing it. Like, we should just be guiding you and then you should be going and doing it and then we should be auditing. And the rest of the letter we've talked about, it talks about qualification again and the emphasis of matter. So nothing else I really wanted to bring to your attention there.
Thank you, Nicole.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A little late coming in. Is this the 2024 audit that you're talking about?
Yes, this is for 2024.
Okay, is this document available publicly?
It will be once it gets submitted with their Paris report. This is a draft version.
This is the draft.
The audit,
And not,
yeah, let's see.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, public comments at the end, okay?
Yes.
Got it.
Because it's still working document, you don't post it on the website until the
Right,
finish.
but I look at the agreement, yeah. Can you resend it?
Yeah.
Thanks.
So do we need a resolution or do we wait until we have the?
I believe you would want to accept it now so
Yeah.
that it can be finalized.
Okay, so, I mean, I thought we had resolution, but, can I get a motion?
Hang on a second.
Yeah.
But do you want us to read very carefully the note, note 13 to make sure it's okay? So
You should, I mean, you could accept it with the understanding, I don't know how your resolutions work, but a lot of the jobs that I do, they'll accept it with the understanding that there may be tweaks with it.
Okay.
You know, you can always send it my way.
Yeah.
That's acceptable.
that if we don't do it this month, we have to wait for next.
Right.
Can I get a motion to accept the audit with the additional caveat that if we need to tweak it, we can tweak it and send it back to Nicole?
So,
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passed. Thank you, Nicole.
You,
I think the next is, you got for the record.
Yeah. So the next is the record management. I got in there about 6 hours today. And further separating boxes that seem to be like HHA boxes or specifically, about bliss towers or things like that. Because we have so many boxes. So the key is to figure out, what is our obligation to keep or what other sister organizations, these are their records that they may want. So it's separating those into different areas of this big room. That's what the 6 hours was spent on. So moving forward with that, reach out to Chris. I don't know how this process should really work, but I think, we should involve with the different urban renewal stuff that seems more specific to other organizations, kind of clue them into these records exist here. And whose obligation it is to keep these records, to digitize, because some of them are like, if you apply for housing through, HHA or one of these organizations, those records have to be kept forever versus other ones where it's only 6 years or things like that, that are maybe, minutes of a meeting or something like that. So that's kind of the main process. So we can whittle down some of these boxes and understand what organization they kind of belong to if they don't, belong to Hcdpa.
Is there some reason why you think they don't belong to HHA? I mean Hcdpa, because if you were running, are they labeled as if they belong to HHA?
Yeah, some of them, or specifically about like projects, bliss towers or stuff that's, urban renewal, but I'm not sure it's under the auspices of.
Oh, absolutely. Urban renewal is Hcdpa.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I'm saying. Ones that are specific to HHA, and this may be something.
But so the property, right? The property acquisitions definitely would have been HHA. I mean Hcdpa, excuse me, yours, right? The urban renewal projects were this agency, right?
How would is this something I can send you examples of some of the files inside this? And
well, what you usually do is have an index, right? And go over the index versus the requirements for maintenance of records, as you said, minutes are forever. Certain things are permanent. Right. So, yeah.
I guess part of my confusion is because these organizations have, been one time in one organization and then split apart.
No. I don't believe that's ever been the case. That's not correct. As far as I know, the Urban Renewal Agency was always Hcdpa. HHA is the housing. It's a public housing agency. It's a separate section of the statute. Pardon?
What about HDC?
HDC has nothing to do with these. It's a completely separate organization.
They were combined at one point.
Mm-hmm.
No, they were not combined.
They definitely were. I was on the committee when they were.
They shared the same executive director.
Yeah.
Yes, I think they may have been managed concurrently, but they didn't, because Hcdpa is a statutory organization. So I think that's not correct. I think they may have had the same management at some point.
So maybe during having the same management, maybe HDC files got put into Hcdpa's.
Well,
possible?
also Hcdpa, Mayor, didn't Hcdpa used to have the employee who managed the Section 8 vouchers, right? I believe it was Hcdpa that had that employee. Betty, was it? If I'm reaching back into my memory, right?
That's before my time.
Yeah, I'm sure it was.
Well,
Are you
yeah.
trying to age me? Huh?
The meetings were ran as HCDPA, HCD meetings.
Yeah, I hear that, but they were, from a corporate perspective, they were separate. So,
Gotcha.
But it's possible, Logan, that there are old like housing voucher records, right, that belong to Hcdpa, right?
Yeah.
So, so yeah, and I guess I would say, you try to index the boxes, right? You start at the high level and try to index the boxes and see if you've got somebody else's boxes. And And, you know, HDC, if there are HDC boxes, they probably belong with someone else.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. Because
Yeah,
some of them,
so,
some of the boxes are labeled, some aren't. So some are indexed, albeit in a messy way, but some are labeled like HDC. You see that,
Right.
and I understand,
Right.
housing voucher stuff. That is our obligation to keep
right,
permanently. I understand that.
right, right. But yeah, HDC, I think should go to somebody else, assuming you look inside and the red ropes in there are actually HDC files. And then same with HHA files. You know, I guess you'll have to look, you know, if you want to send me, you know, the high level index that you're going through and maybe just pick a few items out and go through them, maybe we can figure out what you've got there in boxes. And at
Okay,
least
yeah.
whittle your boxes down, you know?
Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah,
It's sort of unwieldy, you know, there's a lot going on there.
yeah,
But with
Yeah.
the audit and everything, that was about 6 hours of my month. So going forward, it should be something I have more time to do.
okay.
That was a good amount of time.
And it's when you're in there, you know, in the cemetery by yourself, it feels like a long time. Okay, the next item is the HHA update, which is just really, we've gotten signatures. Dominic signed, HHA signed. I'm mailing that to Chris. I already scanned it to Chris. I don't know that there's really any other update besides that. Because the rest is, you know, closing and whenever that'll happen. Dominic
Right.
or Chris,
Right, that'll be up to HHA. When they're ready to move forward, they'll let us know what their timing is. But for the board and Mr. Chair, for the board, later in the meeting, you may want to take up the remaining property is now terminated. And so how you want to, you know, move forward with that, you may want to set up a meeting just to talk about that.
Yeah, that's
in
on
our
my,
new business.
on the agenda for new business.
Well, so that brings us to financial, which I can go through the different things. So you have an invoice for me, RCMP, 2 invoices, the audit, which they labeled as finance audit bill, our insurance for the properties, which was the exact same amount as last year, was $1,120, and then the 2 Barton and Lodge ones that were specifically byline for the floodplain permit review. So if anyone had, I know that's a, you know, 5 different things. So if we have any questions or want to go over anything.
Any questions on the bills?
No, I don't have any.
We did reconcile together.
And we reconciled, and the balance sheet and profit and loss I both posted an email.
Can I get a motion to pay the bills?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
So that brings us to the resolutions and motions. We already did the audit. Right, we passed that. So then we're on to new business.
So,
Or I'm sorry, we're old business, sorry.
old business.
Any floodplain update? I know that was kind of part of the 2 bills we're paying.
Yeah, just the 2 bills. No update in terms of anything to sign. Maybe they're waiting for us to pay the bill. I don't know, but nothing yet, Chris, or anything on the application. My understanding is done, but I think they're waiting on one other thing, but I'm not sure what they're waiting on.
Our consulting engineer was waiting on an as-built, which, you know, the last time I checked with them, which was not, you know, it was a few weeks ago, they had not received yet.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mhm.
So that brings us to new business, which the first item is the termination of those properties. Dominic, if you wanted to.
Yeah, so with the termination of the properties, I think that with the result of our audit, that we need to move quickly on making a decision on getting them on the market for sale. The remaining properties that HHA doesn't want to purchase. I think we need to, in the past, from my experience, Kamal, you might know too, that the auction didn't work when we tried to auction them. It didn't work. So I think we need to be, maybe, aggressive in terms of finding, a way to get it out in the public and put it out, and get a real estate, agent or whatever we need to do. Chris, what can we do legally in terms of for selling this property? Can we go through a realtor?
Yes, you can, if you determine that that's the most expeditious and, the best way to get the best value, right? Because that's the goal.
Yeah.
What-
I mean, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Nope, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, that would be my thought is to, now what we would do, we would have to do an RFP. How would we do in selecting a realtor?
It's to depend on your procurement policy. I would say typically you might want to, identify, a few to interview, right? I mean, a form of, right? Looking at the value, what's the value of the, of the contract?
Can we do like a committee for this? Assign a committee to do this, or do we have to do this every month?
No, you can assign a committee, but again, the committee's still going to be a public meeting, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yep. Right.
Yeah.
You can use one of your existing committees if you want, or make an ad hoc committee.
Okay. Logan, what you mean, between the finance and
Right.
outside governance and audit? Yeah.
The other thing that may be helpful, we got the appraisal in 2021. I can recirculate that. So that'll show you how much the remaining properties were appraised at. You can see where they're at on the map. Yeah.
I don't think that they have a very high value.
If I remember, there's one where it's questionable whether you could build on it. There's one that was valued more than the rest that, we still have. And then there's the one on Columbia that's just that small lot that in the past people had parked on.
So,
Because I think the reason I'm asking that, Dominic, when you start talking about trying to get a realtor, I don't think we're going to be inundated with people because they will be getting paid a % on commission for the sale, and it's not going to be a very significant deal for a realtor. But I think we should look at the value of them.
Yeah, I think one is still significant.
well, my thought was that, not only do we need to get them out, but we also need to know more about them. Like, can you build on it? What are the codes related to that property in that area before we start, putting it for sale? Because somebody comes in and won't know, well, can I build on it? Can I not build? What can I do?
Some of that
Things
will
like
be
that.
in the appraisal. So after this meeting, I can
So we're
circulate
gonna
that right
try
away.
and probably do another, the appraisal that was done.
Yeah, in 2021,
That would be the same, but not the, what they say about what can be built on will be the same, not.
you would think so. Yeah, the
not
properties fundamentally haven't changed in there.
Well,
And I agree with Margaret on that about maybe not. Maybe we thinking about putting it out there for someone to sell because of what it may cost us.
so Margaret, would you be interested in sitting on the committee?
I really don't have time. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Anyone else interested in sitting on the committee?
Well, access, like, you asking me? I mean, 1, 2, 3. If you're asking me, yes, but I mean, if you're just.
Well, I figure, I don't,
Ask me.
summertime, I mean, it's busy,
Sorry
but
about that,
I
but
just
like
want
to be
some-
asked to.
we have to be aggressive on this.
I'm
But you have-
a licensed real estate broker.
Right, so I think that you have value on there because you know, like you said,
Exactly.
we can start what, you know, identifying what can be built and how to word what needs to be worded. And then, you know,
So are you asking me?
Sure.
Thank you.
would,
And
yeah,
I say yes.
would you like to chair it, Teresa?
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Hey, Commissioner Smith, would you like to sit on this beautiful committee?
Would I like to? Probably not. Would I? Yes. If I had to, yes. Would I like to? No.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, you're too busy, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'll sit on it with you.
Right.
Too. So, because I think it's important that one of the other things I think we need to do is identify that property that has, parking on it and fence it off and put no.
Are you talking about the one that the next door neighbors using?
Right. I think we need to identify, that, put no trespassing, give the, whoever's parking on it time to remove. And then if it doesn't get removed, we'll have to take the initiative to tow them or, you know, do what needs to be done. Because we don't want the damage, whatever get done, and we're gonna be starting to take pictures and everything, so we want to make sure that, you know, the property is gonna look like. So. Okay, so Chris, we just need to identify the members on the committee then?
Yep, if you can appoint a committee and then the committee can meet to make a I guess you would be making a recommendation as to the disposition. Or,
Right.
you know, hire, and the board would then hire a broker at the next meeting, would be the goal.
Perfect. Okay. Okay, Teresa, and then we'll talk, Teresa, because then I think that's probably what we'll meet. If we can meet more than once, right, before the meeting?
You bet. Just make sure
Long-
you're having Logan post those meetings, right?
Yep, yeah, okay.
We have to have minutes on the meetings that we have.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an open meeting,
Right.
yeah. Okay, so
I want to ask another question. Should we bring in an outside public
what?
for this committee? No,
It has to be open to the public.
I didn't say that. Should we like bring in a person from the outside to be a part of it? Is that possible?
Well, but they won't have any voting or anything, but we could solicit, you know, I guess opinion maybe of someone from outside for,
That's what I was thinking.
you know,
Yeah.
because we want to be able to, you know, interview potential realtors, you know, moving forward, you know, it's after we decide on what the dispositions of all the properties are, the values, and, you know, the ins and outs of like I said, the codes or whatever, then we can interview realtors.
Okay, well, we can talk about it
Yeah.
in the committee. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So just for clarity, the committee members are Smith, Joyner, and Morante. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
What are you guys gonna call yourselves?
Ad hoc,
Dominic Joyers.
Yep.
the ad hoc,
Property disposition.
perfect. Property disposition. Thank you, Chris. Yes, 1 minute.
Cool. So that kind of covers that. Right away, I'll circulate that appraisal so we can know what we're talking about.
Okay. Next is the Hudson Trust Fund. Is Michelle on?
Yeah, she just submitted something.
Yeah. Michelle, are you there?
There, but she's muted.
I'm here, but my audio isn't working. Okay, so how about this? Nothing to add to what so we can look at the minutes So they will be meeting May 14th. The Know Your Rights tenant webinar held April 23rd, which was
That was
yesterday.
yesterday.
Well, she'll post that recording on the city website. They received a small grant from Bank of Greene County. Hudson Roots, they have spent $4,625 since last month. 10 people were assisted, 3 households, 2 for current rent, 1 for back rent. The different reasons: unable to work due to illness, they fell behind on rent, spouse with health problems, catching up now on rent, and rental support because of needed funds for car repairs, so wouldn't lose job. And notes at the bottom of that: Catholic Charities is out of rental funds, and county ARPA. What is ARPA?
Yeah. So,
ARPA? Okay.
American Rescue Plan Funds.
I see. Are also close to running out, so Hudson Roots is becoming one of the only funding sources,
And
which,
Hudson Roots is through Promise. Okay.
yeah, and that's what, we $50,000 a year that we give as a part of the grant we have received, and that money comes from the trust fund. Any questions on that? I could try to answer them. Okay. And then I think, any public comment?
Lloyd, it's your time if you need any public comment.
Are you accepting bids? And you have a list of properties?
Well, we have to discuss that.
Are you accepting offers? And you have a list of properties?
We haven't met yet in the first property disposition meeting, but after that happens, we'll figure that out from there.
Beautiful.
So they'll develop a plan.
How many properties?
So there's sort of many, but I think it's 3 properties, and then there's different parcels on those properties, but the most cogent way to think of it is 3 properties.
How soon would it be possible to get a list of these properties?
Soon as we meet,
Any
we
sooner?
say
Logan,
couple of months.
couple of months?
Well, we have to,
Urgency.
we have to iron out the values, right?
Yeah.
We got to see if, what the properties can be used for, right? In
Right.
terms of the code and everything. So we want to make sure that all the information is going to be out there, for proper sale, right? If we,
Maybe I can assist in that process, but that's another thought. If I'm correct, and I'm new to all this, please pardon me. I mean, the purpose of disposing of this property is to get it off the books because it's not generating revenue and it's currently a liability for the audit. Is that a correct understanding?
Yeah, sort of.
And
Sort of.
sort of. You say sort of, I'm gonna come back.
Well, it's an asset. These properties are an asset that aren't generating revenue. I guess is, one way to look at it.
they have been tried, be sold before and the auction, and the price was so low that it wasn't even,
Then we go in bed.
so,
Gotcha. Fair. Thank you.
okay, if that's all for public comments,
It is.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Logan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Logan,
Bye-bye.